Welcome, everyone, to 6 Wellbeing Practices to Start Today. I'm Martha Williams, and I work with the 1440 Multiversity team that schedules workshops and helps teachers to develop their programs. I've had multiple conversations with each of the faculty members who are part of tonight's webinar, and I appreciated the way that they show up in our work together, either by sharing how they care for themselves or simply showing up in a way that makes it clear that well-being practices are an essential part of their daily lives. And in working with them, I've found them to be calm, present, kind, and generous with their time, knowledge, and experience. Having conversations that matter is a big part of what the Multiversity is about. And nourishing the self is definitely a conversation that matters these days. We decided to bring together these 3 experts in their fields and have them share their 2 top well-being practices, and also hear how they've been riding the waves of uncertainty and stress over the past few months. There will be time for questions and answers at the end of the webinar, so please submit them via the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Alane Freund is a family therapist and an expert on high sensitivity. Scott Schwenk is a master coach and meditation and breathwork teacher. Sara Avant is a best-selling author and yoga and meditation teacher. Welcome, Alane, Scott, and Sara.
Thank you, Martha. It's great to be here.
Are you there, Alane and Scott?
We're going
Yes, thank you.
We're going to introduce ourselves individually. I'm going to go first. My name's Alane Freund. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in Northern California and an international consultant on high sensitivity. I have a twice-a-month webinar that I lead, and I'll tell you what, the theme has been pandemic, COVID, shelter in place, stay at home, and self-care every single webinar. I found out that I could reach so many people via webinars and videos and YouTube, and I think that's the #1 way that I've been trying to get my message out. In terms of my personal practices and surviving, I'm so blessed and fortunate that I live in the country. So all I have to do is walk outside my house and I'm in nature and I can easily exercise, and I'm eternally grateful for that opportunity. I've been posting every now and then little videos of myself on my bike. I had my knee replaced in 2018, and I've been on a stationary bike in the gym for the last couple of years. And it's been really important to me, but then the gym's closed, and I still needed to move my knee. So I learned how to ride a bike on the street, by golly, and it wasn't easy because I'm a ranch girl. I know how to ride a horse, not a bike. And when I post these videos, what comes up for me, I say over and over again, and this is not one of my 6 practices, but I need to move and to sweat to burn off the stress. We are experiencing societal and planetary trauma right now, and it can really activate our past traumas and our current stressors. So I've been moving my body, my feelings, my experiences, my stress through my life, and really, I think it's possible to thrive, and I feel great, and I have so much compassion for everybody who's stressed and challenged right now. So that's me.
Thanks, Alane.
Thank you. My name is Sara Avant, and as Martha shared, I am best-selling author. I've written 2 books, The Way of the Happy Woman and The Book of She, and I specialize in feminine spirituality. And I am quarantined here in Santa Barbara, California, and I'm quarantining alone with no other humans, but I do have my dog Sadie and my house plants and a beautiful little garden, and all of those things are helping to keep me company. And I felt a lot of different flavors over these past, I guess it's been 2.5 months now that I've been social distancing. And, there have been moments of deep stress and initially panic and anxiety and worry, concern about my older parents who are vulnerable because of their age and just pre-existing health conditions. And just the fact that I'm not around other humans has been really hard. But there's also, as I know so many people have spoken about, there have been a lot of silver linings. I am very introverted, and there's a part of me that likes to live kind of a monk life existence anyway. So it has felt nice to feel the world start to slow down to my pace, and to really reframe this time as a retreat. And I'm just spending a lot more time doing my personal practices, my meditation, yoga, journaling, sleeping. Just really didn't realize how exhausted I was. I thought I was taking good care of myself before, but just having more space, I feel a deep decompression, which has been welcome. And just time to reflect on, am I really living the life I want to live? And how can I come into greater alignment?
Thanks, Sara. I've heard that a lot from introverts, that they're all sort of saying, this is the way life should be.
I know.
This works for me.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thanks. And Scott.
Wow. Thank you, Alane and Sara. I'm quarantined in Los Angeles, although, as I hear those words come out of my mouth, I'm quarantined. I don't feel quarantined anymore. I did at the beginning. In fact, I was dealing with a combination of ecstatic joy in a certain way. And I mostly identify as an extrovert, but I have a very deeply introverted, sensitive side. So what you said, Sara, about the world slowing down to your pace, or in this case, my pace. Wow. I mean, being able to walk around the city streets and have them be empty and be able to walk down the middle of Sunset Boulevard, for example, at 5 o'clock in the evening in the beginning, was fantastic. It was something out of a dream. The anxiety would come up for me when I would read the news. And I've had to make some really strong determinations with myself, much like I made around the 2016 presidential election, to tune my attention where my attention would be best used. And I realized that if there was something truly important for my well-being or those that I care about, I would be able to find it out without necessarily having to scroll the newsfeed every day. I've truncated that down to, I just maybe glance at some headlines once a day. And if I need to look something up, I do. I've found that most of it, I don't need to look up. I don't need to follow up on. I'm on a text system with my city that will let me know anything truly important I need to be responsible for, like when we were told we have to wear masks when we step out of the house. For me, this quarantine time, this shelter in place has been a profound retreat. I am not the same person that went into this retreat, and I'm quite happy about it. It's like, those of you who know about the Marie Kondo process, now I haven't read the book, so don't ask me a lot of questions. I just know about letting go of things that don't bring joy. And so I've been doing that very naturally, cleaning out things out of the house. And let me just add this little wrinkle, because I know many of us are having multiple circumstances. It's not just quarantine. We all had lives going on that are still carrying on. My mother passed away from cancer after a 12-year battle in October. So I'm fresh in the corridor of grief of losing a parent, and then suddenly quarantining alone, like you, Sara. What was harder for me than reading the news and making up stories in my head about some horrible future for the world, what was harder than that was not being hugged, not being touched, and learning then how to pivot and use the practices that I've made my life about to uplift myself. And I didn't say this, I'm a master coach, meditation teacher, and I bring breath work to most of what I do with people. So what that really adds up to is facilitating individuals, groups, and cultures, waking up more deeply, stretching what we can be conscious of. You could call that working towards the stages of enlightened awareness, and then growing up, digesting, dissolving, and integrating and learning from prior tension patterns, prior wounding experiences. So that's a little bit about my life. And I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Martha.
Our pleasure. Thank you, Scott. Scott, how about you start us off with a short meditation before we dive into the three of you sharing your favorite well-being practices?
I would love to. So if you're comfortable with this, please elongate your spine and sit in a way that helps you to feel really good about yourself. And then if you're comfortable, please close your eyes. If you're more comfortable with open-eyed, I would suggest picking a place forward of you on the floor to gently gaze at rather than the screen. And just begin to feel the sensations of your breath, touching the tip of your nose, caressing the back of the throat, cool on the way in, warm on the way out, and the accordion-like expansion and release throughout the rib cage as the breath is coming in and going out. And just welcome a deeper in-breath and see if you can let the exhale go out a bit longer. Each in-breath coming in a little deeper, each exhale going out a little longer. The longer and the thinner you make each exhale, the more the thinking stream will naturally slow down. Keep orienting your attention gently at the edge of the sensations that you can feel where the breath is touching your body. Right at the edge, just relaxing there. And as you do this, bring a portion of your awareness to the soles of your feet. And with your imagination, deeply and continuously soften the soles of your feet like you're opening fists with your mind, softening the skin, the tendons and connective tissue, as well as the muscles, all the way to the bone. The breath is coming in deep. It's going out long. And as you continue to soften the soles of your feet, do the very same thing with the palms of your hands, soles and palms, softer and softer and softer, letting go. Have the feeling that the next inhalation gently lifts your awareness to the region of your physical head where you're softening all four corners of your eyes. You're melting the inside and outside corners of your eyes like butter on a hot day. And as you're softening these four corners of the eyes, do the very same thing with the region inside and around your ears. Letting go, letting go, letting go. Let your tongue come deeply to rest in the floor of your mouth, softening your tongue from end to end. As you melt all the little muscles moving throughout the entire perineum, pelvic floor, groin region, sphincter, PC muscle, letting go, letting go, letting go. The breath is flowing like water, coming in deep, and it's going out long. Have the feeling that with each exhale, you're able to exhale the energy of thinking itself, as well as any tension anywhere in your body, exhaling it into the soil below the building where you are, letting it compost there to be breathed back in as the next fresh inhale. Feel that the next inhale expands your awareness a bit wider than your physical body, and you playfully now soften all 6 points at the same time. Soles of the feet, palms of the hands, corners of the eyes, region of the ears, tongue, and pelvic floor, groin region. As the breath continues to flow in deep and flow out long. Let yourself begin to notice that the more you soften these 6 points, a subtle feeling, a beautiful, subtle feeling begins to come into the foreground of your experience in your body. This is the energy of meditation, naturally unfolding itself within you. You gently toggle your attention between continuing to soften the 6 points and lightly resting your attention on this subtle yet firm force unfolding gently throughout your body-mind. Leaving your eyes closed, ever so gently, deepen your breath. Know that this is just a taste, a small taste of what's available within you. I invite you, before you open your eyes, to consider making a playful commitment to continue softening these 6 points, letting your breath come in deep and go out long throughout our session. And notice your own awareness. Notice how your body feels, particularly when you get up from the session. When you're ready, you can gently open your eyes and we'll continue to move forward with our conversation that matters.
These 6 practices. We will now step into sharing these 6 practices. Sara, when you're ready, why don't you start us off?
Okay, thanks, Martha, and thanks, Scott, for that meditation. The first practice that I want to share is one that I've been doing for a long time, and I just find it so helpful, but I especially find it helpful during challenging seasons of life, and that is the practice of empowering questions. Empowering questions. And if we look at history, at some of the greatest figures in history, something that they all have in common is that they've really learned how to not only befriend their minds, but also to master their minds. And I know we've all heard a lot that our thoughts create our reality. It's that our minds are that powerful. And so we can use questions as little seeds planted in our minds to help to open us up to creativity, to wonderment, to possibility. Because when things are so uncertain, it's scary, but it's also exciting because it really means that anything is possible if we can just partake in that reality. So empowering questions are really run against mainstream culture, because in so many ways mainstream culture is set up to encourage victim consciousness and make us feel like we're always at the effect of life rather than than the cause of life. And we can't change anything in our lives until we take 100% responsibility. And that doesn't mean that, you know, you let people off the hook for doing an injustice. But we just look at, well, this is how things are. There's an acceptance of reality. And given that, what am I going to do with it? How am I going to make the most of it? So these questions, they don't necessarily have a succinct answer. In fact, they don't at all have a succinct answer. They're really questions that we live into and that we can meditate upon, like actually in a meditation or in our journals, when we're washing our dishes, when we're going for a walk, we kind of ruminate over them. And these questions, they call forth our highest self, rather than victim consciousness, which keeps us, it's really centered in the amygdala in the brain, the stress response, the fight or flight response. And when we're in that fight or flight response, we cannot think greater than the level of what we're feeling. So when we ask ourselves these deeper questions, it helps us to shift into the neocortex, where creativity, curiosity is available to us. And then we can also start to feel a wider range of emotions as well, and start to move into even more of those elevated emotions, like Scott was saying, this feeling of I forgot your exact words, but excitement or euphoria at times. So there's so many different kinds of empowering questions, but I'm just going to share some of them that I ask myself on the regular, and especially right now. One of them is, what do I want? What do I want in life? What do I want for myself? What do I want for the world? And then we can take it even deeper and ask, what do I really want? What do I really want? And feel into that. Explore that. Some other questions are, who do I want to be on the other side of this? And what actions do I need to take to move me in that direction? What thoughts do I need to think to start to become that version of myself? What feelings do I need to feel? What words do I need to speak? Because this creation of ourselves and of our lives, it is a creative act, and it comes through our actions, our words, our thoughts, our feelings on a day-by-day basis, choice by choice. What is this here to teach me? You know, I think that, and I know all of us here have been through hard things in life, and it's rare that comfort teaches us a lot. Discomfort is a tremendous teacher. And these kind of harder lessons they can be painful to learn. They can require a lot of patience, and even patience in and of itself is a lesson. So really looking, what is this here to teach me? We can ask, what would this look like if it were easy? A lot of times we can add things on top of an already hard situation and ask, what would this look like if it were easy? And another question, what would the most empowered version of myself do in this situation? What would the most empowered version of myself do in this situation? And then on a daily basis, I'm just asking, what is my next right step? What is my next right step? Because yes, we have that outer news, those outer news sources, but ultimately no one out there knows what's happening. And inside each of us, we have this inner wisdom, this inner guidance that knows more than our conscious mind knows, and that can help to guide us for how we're supposed to be, what we're supposed to be learning, what we're supposed to be doing during this time and moving forward. So what is my next right step? And I invite you to just consider maybe what are other questions that you might like to ask yourself each day to ground you in this bigger picture, in this more creative perspective. And I'd love to hear from you, Scott and Alane. Do you have any questions that you find helpful, or how is this practice landing for you?
First of all, yay, thank you. Particularly, I'm going to take your verbiage around that. What would the most empowered version of myself do at this point in time? I like that a lot. Or what would depending on the quality that's missing in my experience, like what would the most loving aspect of myself do? Or the most compassionate or rested, well-fed, whatever the case may be.
Well hugged.
Well hugged, yes. Yeah, these are, it's like, for me, and I don't know the brain science behind this activation that I've depended on in my life and my work, which is practicing the feeling before the actual circumstances. I feel like your question is inviting me to have the feeling of being already empowered and just start to recognize that, or hugged, or loved, or fed, nourished, clear, grounded. I don't really have questions to add to it. I think that for me, it's a matter of, like the opening meditation, creating a spacious enough mind for the question to work.
Yeah.
And I love the concept that I love this, Sara, because I like to just be able to live in the question. And I feel like so many of us in this culture anyway, in the US, live in the answers. We're obsessed with the answers, or finding the answers, or knowing the answers. And to be posing questions and asking questions of ourselves and the universe and the divine, whoever we're asking the questions of, day in and day out, it just reminds me to be open, to be in my beginner's mind, to be in curiosity. It's so, I'm kind of obsessed with opposites, and being in questions is the opposite of being in answers. And as you get to know me, you find out that I'm kind of obsessed with answers. I'm so type A. So it's very, very helpful. I love that. Thank you.
Sara, I do have a question though. How do you, with that one question, what do you want? How do you, with your clients, when they feel particularly stuck about answering that, what's your process for guiding them to find that clarity about what I might want in the moment when I might think I'm living in confusion about that?
I find that free writing is a really powerful tool for that. And just, like Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way, morning pages, just putting a pen to paper and writing stream of consciousness, and just keep asking yourself, what do I want? And see what comes out. Or also writing a letter to desire and having desire write you back through you.
Wow.
And yeah, I've been doing a lot of writing. Usually I do journaling, handwriting, but I've been doing it on the computer. And it's a practice called proprioceptive writing. There's a book called Proprioceptive Writing, if anyone wants to look that up. But basically, I just ask myself these questions, and I just write for 20 minutes, sometimes up to an hour, just asking myself questions and answering. And one of my mentors, I can't remember where this quote comes from, but reminded me that the quality of our lives is determined by the quality of questions that we ask ourselves. Yeah.
Is that Linda Trichter Metcalf's book?
Yes.
Writing? Yeah.
Proprioceptive writing.
Shout out to Linda Trichter Metcalf, also a 1440 Multiversity.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Great.
All right. So reminder, if you have questions for Sara, Scott, Alane, as they're sharing these practices, please put them in the Q&A function down there at the bottom of your screen. And we'll move on to Scott sharing one of his favorite well-being practices.
So I have the benefit of already having shared my two practices, and then I get to tease them out a little bit more. So my two practices for this teleconference are breath and softening. And so I'm going to start with softening, the 6 points of softening now that you've experienced it. My experience shows, and it seems like the science backs it up, that we shift the nervous system by softening particularly the major muscle groups. But if you think about it, if you've had the experience of acupuncture or acupressure, for example, that all the acupuncture points exist for the whole body in the hands and the feet. So just softening the soles of the feet and the palms of the hands radically is its own process. And actually, please be doing this while I'm in this section a little bit more deeply. The eyes and the ears. All the centers of the body are related to through the eyes as well, through iridology. It's its own science. The ears, you can acupuncture the entire ear to reach the entire body. The tongue is said to be the strongest muscle in the body, from what I understand. And then I've noticed, you see, I used to teach it as 5 points of softening. I've noticed that the pelvic floor groin region is a place where we grip. I have, and other people have shared that they do too, prolifically, grip for no good reason throughout the day. And I find that when I live with a gripped region there, I feel ungrounded. I feel like I could tip over. I don't feel clear. I feel a little bit more congested in my awareness. So this business of just softening the body before attempting to ask a question or intervene in a situation, that I want to find my alignment, my best alignment within myself before I act, before I speak. And so for me, the first thing I want to do is soften, simply put. Anybody have a question about that or want to add to that? Sara, Alane?
Yeah, I can say something. It's such a simple and powerful practice. I tend to hold, even though I've been practicing yoga almost every day for 25 years now, I tend to just hold a lot of tension chronically. And I don't always remember just to soften. So I'm gonna weave that in, making
I'm
it
going
just
to add
really
to what you just said, because I think you're pointing at something really important that a lot of us tend to deal with. Like, I have a pattern after decades of meditation, my shoulder tries to creep up and become an earring. And I don't wear earrings, but it keeps trying to become an earring when I'm meditating, and I have to keep coaching it down.
Yeah.
There's some pattern in this side of my body that I've been working out for years, and I need to be patient with it. My work is breath-based, so I find that I want to pay attention to what those areas are of chronic tension. And maybe like what Sara suggested, to let that area do some writing through me. If it's sticking around, what does it have to say? And no edit, just let it speak, while softening as much as possible everything around it. And then perhaps to begin, and I'll touch on it more when my second point about inhaling into the region and gently letting go on the exhales.
When you talk about softening, Scott, I think about my own body and many people's bodies that have old injuries and pain points. And I notice that when I'm softening those places, it's not just the holding, but those places where I have kind of sharp, acute pain on a regular basis. I especially experience a lot of pain when I meditate. And so I was wondering if you could address a little bit this idea of softening in your pain.
Yeah. So there's a few different ways I would hold that question. One is, I'm sorry you're suffering, to all of you who are having acute pain. It's not fun. And for somebody who's got a deep commitment to inner work, to find that it's difficult. One of my deep mentors, who's a profound meditation teacher, can't sit for very long these days in this person's later life without a lot of pain. So it's quite a conundrum. Or maybe your type of work, one's type of work can exacerbate that pain. What I will suggest is that in my own direct experience, there are things that don't seem to move. Like, I'm not going to change the gender of my birth or who my parents were. but many other things are up for alchemy, are up for transformation. First, I must to suspend the doubt. Second, I need to ask myself, what would it feel like if the change had already taken place? What would my body feel like? What would my emotions feel like? And I get to learn to practice that chosen feeling consistently, get to know it. And if I need to, I can use the tantric tool of getting a memory of having felt something similar. When I begin to feel the sensations of the feeling I'm cultivating, I can let the memory go. With enough practice, I won't need the memory. For example, right now, everybody just think of a place in nature that brought you awe. If you've been to 1440, maybe recall being down near the mother tree. That awe of that enormous tree and her beating heart. Notice you're not even there physically, but there's a feeling. And then you can let the memory go and then inhale into that feeling without getting pushy, and it will begin to expand throughout the body. So much, and I know you know this, Alane, as a therapist, that so much of the pain that we experience has a story inside of it, has a moment that didn't get digested. And this is where I find so much value in what in the trade we call somatic work, including the breath, not just talking about something, but breathing into the region with real compassion and listening. And I've noticed that so many of the things we deal with, I was hit by a car as a pedestrian on that side that I'm talking about and thrown 10 feet in the air. So it didn't come out of nowhere. As I'm willing to work with it more and more compassionately, it is melting. It's just taking some time. And to be truly honest, I had so much doubt that it could ever change. That's what was gumming up the works.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Thanks, Scott. And we're getting some great questions so far, so keep them coming, please. And we'll move on to Alane. Alane, share one of your favorite well-being practices, if you would.
I will. The one I'm sharing right now is emotional leadership. And I notice we've been on here for a while now, 37 minutes. So I want to encourage everybody to take a drink and hydrate. Recently, I wrote in a letter to my Are You Highly Sensitive Live members that I often cry when I practice the part of the loving kindness or metta meditation that's toward myself. May I be safe and protected from inner and outer harm. May I be truly happy and deeply peaceful. May I be healthy and strong and physically at ease. May I take care of myself and live with well-being. It's not that I don't cry in my compassion for others, especially those in pain or suffering. And I can also easily cry for my big, soft heart full of love for my dear ones. All that crying is part of the highly sensitive person's emotional leadership. I'm an especially good leader, I suppose. So why the tears when I practice or pray loving kindness for myself? Is it because of a lifetime of strong empathy turned towards others and grief that I was not so kind, loving, or accepting of myself? Or is it for that little child in me, the little one who found the 80% world so overwhelming, that tender-hearted little child who often thought she was wrong in some way because she was different? So many of you know this child in your own early life. Perhaps the tears flow for the traumatized, highly sensitive person I find within me. While so much of childhood was a blend of both hard and wonderful, it also challenges me to go there and have compassion for that child. So I've also experienced my share of big T trauma, some events that might even be traumatic for someone who isn't highly sensitive or doesn't have a finely tuned nervous system. And now our planet, as I mentioned before, in our society, is experiencing big trauma, societal trauma. So a highly sensitive person is probably most people watching this call. It's someone who processes things deeply, becomes easily overwhelmed or overstimulated, has strong emotional responses and a load of empathy, and is sensitive to subtle stimuli. We notice all the little things. I'm sure that's you. We often feel the stress, know the things that are going on, need to have more thoughts and feelings than the other 80%. We're 20% of over 100 species. So when you noticed that you're crying more, that you're angrier, that you're noticing all the little things, that it aggravates you that people don't social distance, or it aggravates you that your community leaders have told you to wear a mask everywhere. When you are bothered by things more than the people around you, instead of saying there's something wrong with you, there's something wrong with me, I encourage you and invite you to lean into that emotional leadership that you have. We are the people who are paying attention to well-being, and we lead those around us to being more compassionate toward themselves and others. So emotional leadership, I'll tell you what, I didn't choose it. I was born this way, and so are you. And we need our emotional leaders. It's a gift that you have. Probably many people here today are sharing their gifts with the world. I know, because you're seeking out 1440 multiversity in your own healing and healing others. So I invite you to lean into those emotions, be them joyful or challenging. And know that when you love and have compassion for yourself, your emotions help others. So that's my tool, emotional leadership. How are you all emotional leaders?
Thank you, Alane. I am definitely a highly sensitive person, very, very much so. And I appreciated that mentioning of the inner child. And that's another practice I've been doing daily, is just checking in with my inner child and seeing, how are you doing? What do you need today? And, there's something that she wants to eat, or like a show she wants to watch, or an activity. I notice that helps to just take care of the more tender feelings. And I've also noticed that things just take a lot more energy right now. Like going to the grocery store is a stressful experience. And even I got a new printer at the beginning of quarantine, and it was supposed to be an easy setup, and it was not.
It never is.
I just abandoned the project because I was getting too frustrated, and I just thought, like, I can't do this right now. I
didn't print for an entire year from a similar situation.
So no printing. I mean, luckily I don't have much to print anyway, but no printing is happening. But I just noticed I need to build these buffers. So if I can go into the grocery store, I know not to schedule other stressful things that day, because I'm going to need time to just kind of decompress afterwards. So I just can't stack things the way that I used to.
And Sara, I just want to acknowledge that you're saying how stressful it is to go to the grocery store. That alone is emotional leadership. Like it normalizes my life. It makes me feel like I'm normal and like I'm okay, because I find the grocery store so stressful and exhausting.
Yeah.
So, speaking it out is another way of leaning into it and sharing it with people. I've been asking people to write and share about their experiences in quarantine and stay at home and all of these things, to share them wherever they share stuff, because all of our experiences are valuable and normalizing.
Alane, when you mentioned compassion, it's ringing inside me to ask, those moments when you're hitting the wall inside yourself, maybe it's just one too many Zoom conferences, and you have to see a client or a patient, and you're feeling angst and upset inside yourself, maybe some personal matter. What is your kind of anatomy, or like you're kind of broken down? I do this, and then I do this, and then I do this, and then I'm feeling the feeling of compassion for myself.
I have very simple practices, and that to me, especially during a work day, is what I need. So I'll just tell you a couple. One is that I do an inversion, and I'm not Sara. So what that looks like for me is I lay down on the floor or on my bed and put my feet up on the wall and close my eyes for 3 minutes. It's an amazing thing. I drink water a lot. And do you know that 80%, you kind of alluded to this, Scott, but 80% of our stimulation comes in through our eyes. So I close my eyes a lot. I even close my eyes during meetings. even when I'm teaching or seeing a client. And those kinds of things really help me. And the last one, besides metta, which is very important to me, I use the Serenity Prayer a lot.
Mm.
And for those who aren't into religion, we call it in therapy the Serenity Creed, which is grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And while it's a prayer from religion, it's also a tool used by the 12-step programs, and it's part of cognitive behavioral therapy, oddly enough. So I like to put my hand in front of my face, pretty close, maybe 4 or 5 inches, maybe 6. And I say, what can I change and control right now? Everything between my hand and my face. And everything out here is out of my control.
Mm.
And that really helps me come to a place of compassion. And, you know, again, as I said in my initial comments, I'm least likely to be compassionate toward myself. I don't have any problem with having compassion for you and the world. So I hope
I
that's,
love what you say about legs up the wall, how physical and obvious that is.
yeah.
I worked straight through the day, and I had a little tiny break before we needed to show up for our preparation. And so I put my headphones on with my binaural beats to take me into Delta. But the main thing was I put my weighted blanket over my hips and pelvis and my upper legs. The weighted blanket for me is a game changer. And there's so many varieties, folks out there, from lighter ones that cover the whole bed to one like mine that's small and you wouldn't want to throw it to somebody because you'll hurt them. But there's something about that weight.
Absolutely.
My dear friend Elena Brower, when people were going into quarantine, she's a fantastic teacher, and she said, if you can, with somebody you feel comfortable and trust, have them lay on top of you. With somebody you love and trust, you feel safe with, that weight of grounding, getting us back down to our feet.
You know, I think we can use our pets that way as well. It's not as much weight, but I often have the teens in my teen group, for example, I ask them to bring their dogs to group when we're doing it on Zoom. And I have them hold their dogs in their laps and on their chests during the session. It's unbelievably grounding, you know, and they move energy as well. So.
Nice tidbits here that we're building on. I love it. Thank you all. Thank you all. Let's keep going. Sara.
All right, that's a great segue into our next practice, these weighted blankets and pets. So our next practice is sensuality. And I don't know about you, but I feel like a couple of times during this quarantine, I've hit a wall where it's like, I found a structure, and that structure worked for me. And then I reached a point where it's like, something has to shift. I need something new. And the recent shift that I made was creating more room for sensuality and pleasure. And this has been a much larger theme in my life, as I know it is for many, in living in a very, increasingly less so, but patriarchal, very masculine dominated world where the feminine is starting to take up more space, but it takes more of an effort to access these qualities. And what I'm really prioritizing during this time is not productivity. I think this is probably the least productive time in my life, at least in terms of what you can see on the outside in terms of output. But it is an incredibly spacious and rich time. And so I'm really prioritizing things that I would say like my inner Parisian likes to do. And I think Paris is going to be one of the first places I travel to once we can travel again, feel safe to travel again. But to do things like wearing dresses and wearing lipstick and planting flowers out in my garden. One of the reasons why I moved to Santa Barbara just over a year ago is because it is so feminine here. There's flowers blooming year round, walking on the beach, being near the ocean, cooking, listening to music. When I hit that wall a little while ago, I added in some Zoom dance classes in the community where I used to live in Colorado, dance classes I used to take, and I realized, wow, I can still do those. So I just do them online. So adding in dance classes, riding my bike. I joined a CSA, which I've been wanting to do for years, and just enjoying seeing this big box of beautiful produce and being creative to see what am I going to make from this. And going out and picking up a croissant from a cafe and just eating a croissant and drinking a nice cup of coffee and just enjoying these simpler pleasures in life. And we all know that stress is really the root of disease. And pleasure is what heals us. There's a whole cocktail of hormones that come about when we experience pleasure. And again, for those of us who are quarantining alone, we need to be more creative about that. What is that going to look like for me? Something I also do is that I've done for a long time, but I'm really emphasizing it now as well, is the Ayurvedic practice of Abhyanga, the self oil massage. And when it's quite warm here, I'll do it with coconut oil. And maybe I'll add an essential oil in, like a rose or a lavender. And when it's cooler, I'll use a sesame oil and just heat it up a little bit. And once a week, I also do it in my hair. That was something I learned during some of my visits to India. I would go to the hair salon with the Indian woman that I used to stay with. And that was just like a regular beauty treatment that they did, massaging the oil into their hair. And it just helps to relax the mind. And it's also great for scalp and hair health. So just seeing what are the things that bring me that joie de vivre, those things that really help me feel more alive, and weaving those in, because those are such great medicine all the time, but especially when things are hard. And there was one chapter in my last book that just ended up on the editing room floor, and that was about the lipstick effect. The chapter was called The Lipstick Effect, and how in the Great Depression, one of the things that women did was they would just wear a lot of bright, beautiful lipstick, because lipstick could just cost, a couple of dollars, and it's an affordable way to just shift your mood and to totally change your appearance. So whether that's actual lipstick or whatever the metaphorical alternative is for you, what is that lipstick effect on those days when, especially on the days when you just don't feel like doing something like that? I think that's when we need it the most, like that phrase, you need to fake it till you make it sometimes. So Alane and Scott, how is sensuality, how is pleasure, how is that showing up in your lives right now?
Start. First, though, I want to say one of the stories I've been telling freshly, and you may know this, and maybe it was in that chapter, is that during the Great Depression, Estee Lauder started her business. And she went knocking door to door selling lipsticks because she knew that a woman would scratch together enough money for a lipstick. And so I tell that story. Now I will tell it with two parts. The part that you just shared, and the part about you can thrive in any economy with the right understanding of the law of attraction and practicing a chosen inner state. So that, and then two, the sensuality piece. Oh my goodness, yes. I'm a man, so that the culture I grew up in, I was born in 1972, was not one of great self-awareness. And I wasn't born to enlightened parents. So about 5 or 6 years ago, I remember setting a very strong intention for New Year's to increase what I'll call my sexual intelligence. And I remember about a year ago in that process saying to myself, am I treating myself when I'm having time alone like I would want a lover to treat me? Or would I kick that person out? And I realized I would have kicked that person out. That I wasn't taking my time, I wasn't exploring, I was chasing a concrete idea And for me, sensuality is absolutely polar opposite to that, to take the real time. There's a whole set of teachings, tantric teachings, that say something to the effect of, I think it's from the Shiva Sutras, when the object, the desired object, makes its first contact with the sense, seeing, tasting, touching. We'll just say the croissant, chocolate croissant, warmed up perfectly. The first moment of the first touch to the tongue, if I can be present with that moment, it's an opening to enlightened awareness. So that anything that you mentioned I could engage with can be that opening if I'm willing to just slow down and be present with it. But absolutely, cooking, I've been cooking since I was 4, and I mostly haven't been for many years because I live alone and I'm busy. I've been loving it. So that's my little 2 cents on sensuality. I could go on forever about it. And also not turning it into a fixation or an addiction, like finding that sweet spot.
Yes.
And it makes us, makes me think also about that self-compassion. And, I alluded to it in our discussion just a moment ago, that for me, the animals are a huge part of my sensuality. And I'm really blessed to get to keep seeing clients with my horses. And there's something about just, even if you don't touch them, just spending time with animals that are so present, so where their feet are, that is so sensual. I love this practice, Sara. Thank you so much for sharing it.
Yeah, thank you, Alane. So in line with that practice of sensuality, we'll just take a few minutes to move. So if you want, you can stand up. I'm going to stay seated so you can see me. But let's go ahead and we'll inhale and reach our arms out and up. And then just imagine that you're climbing something. So you're reaching one arm up as you pull the other one down. Just feel your shoulder blades sliding on your back. It's like massaging the space in the back of your heart. And then reach both arms up, interlace your fingers and flip your palms and stretch your palms up as you root your seat down. And then we'll just sway a little bit side to side, opening up the sides of the lungs. This is something I've been doing every day, is just opening up the sides and the backs of the lungs. Taking some deep breaths into your upper chest. And then we'll release our hands down, and then let's roll our shoulders, rolling our shoulders. And it can also feel good to stretch the jaw, opening, closing the jaw, and even moving it side to side. Yeah, and rolling your head, whether that's all the way around or just halfway. And make sure that you go in both directions. Good, and we'll just give a little shake. You can also shake out your arms and hands. Beautiful. And we'll move on to Scott with our second to last practice.
So I've pretty much introduced it, and that is breath. And in the tradition, there's over 500 types of breathing patterns that can move energy in their own unique ways. There's the 3-part breathing process that I lead I call it ecstatic breath work. It's all through the mouth, and it's its own process, and it can move tremendous amounts of energy. In fact, people say that it's like 30 years of therapy in one session often. But there's so many other breathing patterns. So inhaling deeply and exhaling long is one of them. I'm going to give you a very specific tool now. In one repetition, you'll notice something. So take one cleansing breath and fully empty out. Now inhale slowly and deeply to your lowest part of your belly and hold the breath at the top. So hold that breath. Now have the feeling as slowly as humanly possible to exhale down the center of your legs, out the soles of your feet into the earth. It's 10 times slower than you think. Oh, beautiful. You feel that across the universe. That's one repetition. What if you did 3 of them 3 times a day, or 3 of them at the beginning and the end of the day, or before you eat a meal? Through the process of helping my mom pass from her body in hospice, 2 things became incredibly obvious to me. 1, love is the whole story. Without love, nothing matters. And without breath, there's no life. I can't really expect myself to touch love if I'm not breathing fully, if I'm holding on. So you've got this inhaling deep into the low part of the belly, exhaling as slowly as possible down into the ground through the centers of your legs, out the bottoms of your feet. This is particularly helpful for anxiety. Very, very helpful. And because of the neuroplasticity, the malleability of our brain and nervous system, practice makes permanent. So the more that we practice this breath, especially when we don't need it, then when we do need it, the circuits fire right away to ground, relax, and be present. The second breath, and the main one I shared, is just inhaling into any place that's holding energy or tension and slowly letting go on the exhale, having the feeling that each exhale is an occasion to let go. Thoughts from my co-panelists? Questions?
Breathing has been a huge practice for me right now too. I'm just spending much more time than usual in the mornings when I'm doing my meditation and yoga, doing breath work. And I've also started doing, I know it's very popular right now, I've heard so much about it, but I've started doing the Wim Hof breathing. And that's been very impactful too. So
I do it every morning.
Yeah.
And after 18 years of leading the breath work, I wasn't doing it every day until about 2.5 years ago when I was going to teach at my first Wanderlust festival. And ever since then, 30 minutes to an hour every morning. And it continues to teach me. It's the most important thing I feel like I do every day, because it's a place where I can actively spot things that I haven't let go of and let go of them without having to figure anything out.
Scott, I love that expression, practice makes permanent. It's so important. You know, being the psychology person here, I think about those pathways in my brain that get sometimes to be kind of deep ruts. And it's hard to make new paths, you know, like if you're going hiking and the rut is so deep that it's up to your hips from all the erosion.
Yes.
And you got to climb out of that, and it's hard to climb
Yes.
out. And then you have to walk through the prickly stuff, or, you know, maybe some poison oak to be up on the other path that needs to be forged. And so you made me think of that. And I just love that idea. And, you know, the first time you walk on that new path, the first time I really make it through a day where I remember to mindfully breathe, to do a breathing exercise a few times that day, or even just once, it changes everything.
Yeah.
But it does take, I mean, for me, I have to make it a habit. I need to associate it with something to be sure I'm doing it. And I'm, you know, pretty serious about my self-care practices. And it's still hard for me. Do you think that if what you remember is one breath in a day, that's helpful?
I do. I think one breath is better than none.
Yeah.
And also, I think it's valuable that some of these practices are new to y'all in the audience. Anything that feels difficult, we haven't carved a brain pattern for it yet. Doesn't mean it's impossible. Think about standing on one leg in tree pose for the first time in yoga and wobbling. The teacher, if they're skillful, will remind us that the wobbling is part of the brain and nervous system learning something. So stay with it. Stay with it. Also, there's an app I don't get a penny from it. It's 99 cents in the App Store, called Mindfulness Bell. And it'll ring one of those Tibetan bells like I use to bring you out of meditation. You do whatever your chosen practice is. Mindfulness Bell by Spotlight 6. It's one of the best tools I've experienced, and my clients rave about it if they actually use it.
Yes, my son taught me to use Insight Timer.
I use Insight Timer too.
I love the timer. It's
Yeah.
amazing. I even use it when I'm teaching for my breaks and everything.
Me too.
It's beautiful. easy apps as well.
And if you're not a breather, something like that is great. There's also wearables now that can remind us to breathe. Spire is a company that has a wearable that for women, you can stick it in the bra strap. Men, you can stick it, I don't know, I think at the belt loop, and it connects to your phone and helps you to become a better breather. So there's a lot of support. And without breath, what have we got? In terms of things that feel difficult or habitually those ruts, that's the last thing I wanted to touch on, Alane. The yogis have learned for a long time, and that's why pranayama breath work is such an important part of growing up and waking up. We don't get caught in our minds. It's beyond rationality, and it can absolutely shift how we think, even in one session.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't have to be fancy breath work. It could just be for 5 minutes and then sitting quietly at the end of that, because you're going to want to drop into meditation.
I notice also when I'm going for walks that I'm breathing like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like labor breathing. It's, I think, just a way of discharging tension or something.
It is.
I'm doing just long exhales through my mouth as I'm walking.
Well, and perhaps you've noticed that if you walk long enough and you're walking into a rhythm, there's a point at which your in-breath and your out-breath become even. And the yogic teaching is that when the in-breath and the out-breath become even, awareness drops into the great self, into neutrality, the dynamic stillness behind the mind naturally. So many people are naturally dropping into meditation who do long aerobic workouts or long distance running.
Fantastic.
Right?
So I'll launch in here. Does that sound good? I have a very practical third tool, but I want to give it a little bit of an intro. And that is this idea that I mentioned earlier about opposites. I use this all the time in my work and in my life. I like to think about what is the opposite of what's true right now, or what is that message I'm giving myself. And something I've heard a lot over the last couple of months is our world is turned upside down, or the world is crazy. So when somebody says the world has turned upside down, or the world is just upside down right now, my opposite is, what is right side up? What is right side up? Sara talked about what it's like to be an introvert and have fewer demands on us. I also am an introvert, and I love that nobody's supposed to come too close to me. I do have the benefit of living with my family. And there's another one, my family's driving me crazy because they're always home. And what is the opposite? My family is home. They're safe with me. And that feels wonderful. So I invite you to take the opposite approach to whatever it is. I also want to really talk a little bit about this concept of backwards scheduling. I made this up one day, maybe I'll trademark it. But backwards scheduling, I'm sure as you hear these amazing practices, you think, yes, I'm going to do them. I'm going to do them. These are wonderful. I'm going to do every single one of them every single day. And we all have these great intentions, but how many of you have noticed that you go away from a training and you have these great intentions and you don't end up doing them, right? You lose track and you don't do it. And I know that's true for me as it is for, it's nature, our nature. It's hard to change habits. So scheduling your self-care and well-being practices is absolutely key. So the way I like to think about scheduling is backwards scheduling. And generally, a good way to start is to think about what's the first thing that you need to be able to do in the morning. What time are you going to have that first call, or make that first contact, or do your first meditation or yoga practice? And then to set that time down on your piece of paper. And if you're in a family, this is a great thing to do as a family to help each other backward schedule. Because, I might be in denial about how long it takes me to choose what I'm going to wear that day. Or your 10-year-old might be in denial about how long it's going to take them to brush their teeth. Not only that, to motivate to brush their teeth. So we put everything in the morning between when we want to be, when the kids have to sign on for school, or when I need to have breakfast ready, and take every activity that I want to be able to do before that, so I know what time I need to wake up. And here's a really important point about well-being and about backward scheduling is, how much time do you need to sleep? how much time do you want to sleep? Maybe I'll say. I've learned that 7 hours is my ideal amount of sleep now. I thought it was 8, but I can't even sleep 8. I wake up on my own. So I need to be unwound. How much time does it take you to unwind, to go to sleep at night? I hear from people all the time right now that it's really hard to go to sleep, or they're waking up in the middle of the night. So I know that if I'm going to wake up at 5:30 every morning when the ravens and the rooster seem to be talking to each other in my town, that I need to go to sleep. I need to go to sleep, not lay down in bed, go to sleep 7 hours before that. So I also know that I need to do I like to do an 18-minute guided meditation before I go to sleep. Often I fall asleep in the middle of it, but I'll be generous. And I go right on back through the day before. When I schedule backwards, it takes me out of denial. And I first got this idea from a therapist of mine many years ago, maybe 15 years ago, when she told me to write in my calendar how long it takes me to drive places. Now, I know that many of us are less busy right now because we're not going everywhere we went, but that's about to shift. And I think that we might be in shock as we start doing more things in our lives because we've been used to being a little slower and a little calmer. I have a video on YouTube on my channel, Alane Freund LMFT, about backwards scheduling and creating structure and schedule for during quarantine, but it applies to all of our lives. So I just want to encourage you to give this a shot. It is an amazing tool, and especially parents and families, to teach this to your children. I have to teach it to my inner child because she just wants to go, go, go and do, do, do. And what falls through the cracks is always that quiet self-care, the meditation, the yoga, the laying down with my feet on the wall and my eyes closed, the time I need to spend on the bicycle every day, the time I need to spend doing my hard style plank. That's another one of my big tools. It really makes a difference. And I just do it right here in the chair. I can do it right now. And I need to schedule those things. So I really encourage us to, this is our 6th tool. And I want to take this moment to just say, please schedule these practices into your calendar and you'll do them.
One of the things I learned years ago in a productivity course that's all about creating peace of mind around schedule is if something's worth worrying about, it's worth putting in time. And this is where it really got me, a realistic beginning and ending time. Realistic beginning and ending time. And then I know what I can deal with. And everybody's different. Some people are willing to sit down once a week and map it out, but to have that time where I can look back at my schedule and go, what have I not put in? What's needed? What do I want to feel? And for me, and what I've observed with a lot of people over the years, is the best time to do those core practices first thing in the morning, to take the note on backwards scheduling, find a way to do some practices first thing in the morning to set the tone for the nervous system in the day. I heard a statistic that for people who read negative news reports first thing in the morning, they're more likely at the end of the day to say that they had a bad day.
Yeah, thank you.
Just from that.
Yeah, so important. I'm on a total news fast, not just a news diet. And so that is so true.
And I love this naming of it, backwards scheduling. I've never heard that before. And as you say that, I realize that's what I do. And I guess I've kind of taken it to the next level during this quarantine. And Scott had mentioned Marie Kondo and Does This Spark Joy? And I've been looking at my schedule and just seeing different appointments and things and asking myself, does this spark joy? Like, how does this feel in my body having this on my schedule, knowing this is what I'm going to do? And I'm just getting more honest with myself. That, is this a 9 out of 10? And if it's not, then I'm going to cancel it. I'm not going to do it, unless it's something that I, like my taxes or something like that. But if there's some choice in it, I'm just, there's just a deeper conviction to not do things that I really don't want to do. And I'm also, giving a lot of time to sleep. Like, I'm sleeping up to 10 hours a night, and that feels great. And I'm not turning on my phone until like 11 or 12. I'm taking a lot of time to do my practices. And what I've learned is, to me, luxury is being unhurried and not in having a very spacious schedule. And I'd rather have that. I'd rather just have simplicity and spaciousness in my schedule.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you all so very much. The way you've complemented your practices that you individually share with your comments and your own interpretations or your own versions or enhancements has been really beautiful. Thank you. I'd love to move to questions. Questions and answers, eh?
Yeah.
All right. So question from Adrian. Sara, what do you suggest as a good source of writing prompts for introspection and journaling?
Well, Proprioceptive Writing, that the book and also the website has some good prompts, as does Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way. It's an 8-week course, and I've done that a few times in my life, and that is just filled with writing prompts. And somewhere else where I get good writing prompts is actually from Tim Ferriss. And Tim Ferriss is an author. He has a great podcast, but his blog has a lot of kind of provocative questions as well.
I'll add one in as well. Laura Davis, who is a 1440 faculty member, she's from the Santa Cruz area. She has a service where you get a daily email from her with a writing prompt, and then you have the option of sharing it or not, if that's the kind of thing you're looking for in terms of the sharing, but daily writing prompts. So you just sign up, Laura Davis, just search Laura Davis, writer, teacher, Santa Cruz area.
That's a great resource.
Yeah. Another question from Sandra, and I believe this is for the whole team. Any recommendations for books that offer comprehensive self-care? So physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, social self-care with any kind of science-based, action-oriented elements as well.
It's not yet physical. Oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
It's not inclusive necessarily of the physical, but the first thing that popped to mind is Dr. John Prendergast, The Deep Heart. Prendergast and Adyashanti, those of you who know the great spiritual teacher Adyashanti, wrote the foreword, a pretty beautiful, deep foreword to it. Prendergast is one of the few people that Adya has authorized to teach awakening, the deep heart. And he's also a long-term psychotherapist with a very deep practice and has done a lot of work with people in trauma. So it's actually using the discomfort and the wounding as access to freedom, instead of avoiding it or suppressing it or medicating it.
Nice. Thank you. Alane, Sara, favorite books, self-care?
I'm going to say my first book, The Way of the Happy Woman, and not because I wrote it, but because in there I share just all the tools and practices that helped me to heal from a precancerous condition. And it has yoga practices, meditation practices, journaling prompts, recipes, lifestyle practices. And of course, it's geared towards women, but I know a lot of men who've read it as well.
And it's a beautiful book. The first thing that popped into my mind was the book Mother Nurture. It's written by a couple of different people, one of whom is a physician, and it's pretty comprehensive. It's geared toward mothers, but fathers and anyone who, I'm sorry, I'm a therapist, so we all need to parent ourselves and parent our brains. And it's full of lots of wonderful tools, and many people have referred to it really enjoy it.
Mother Nurture?
Yes.
Nice. Thank you, Alane. And to our viewers, the faculty on the call tonight, they've generously agreed to go beyond the 6:30 Pacific time stop for the questions that we're getting. So if you're able to stay on, please stay on, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. I think we might be able to get to all of them. And you will get a email as a follow-up to this webinar with contact information for all 3 faculty. So you can email them directly with any follow-up questions, or if we don't have a chance to touch on your question tonight. All right, moving on. I'm going to try to blend 2 questions for Scott specifically, although Sara and Alane, jump in if you have thoughts. They're about softening, Scott. So Sandra says, softening makes me think of the parasympathetic nervous system, the relaxation response, being cool, having higher self in the driver's seat. Any books or practices to recommend on this softening? And then we also have a question from somebody new to all this who says, can you explain how to go about this softening that you mentioned?
Excellent. So in terms of books, nothing comes to mind. What I would say is the book lives within you through the practice. There's a point at which information gathering is really helpful to get some new ideas, and there's a point at which we just become addicted to information gathering. So you want to find that sweet spot. So I'm going to answer the second question and the first question together. Back to the 6 points of softening. How that generated, I was sitting meditating at a period in my life a number of years ago when I was doing 3 and 4 hour sits. And I was trained by my teacher, Sally Kimpton, to go all the way up and all the way down the body, but start at my toes, work my way up. I'm such a perfectionist historically that I would get to my knees and forget where I was because I was dropping into meditation. And I got so frustrated, I said, screw this, out loud in my house. You've got to show me another way. And one by one, these points lit up literally in my body, and the voice said, breathe into and soften them progressively, and everything in between will. And I found that to be the case. So to the friend who asked about the process, the 6 points, the way I work with them work well in pairs. So soles of the feet and palms of the hands work well as a pair. Second pair is the 4 corners of the eyes and the region inside and around your ears. So if you want less or no Botox, really soften the 4 corners of the eyes and you'll feel the forehead soften. And those of us, and I'm a recovering jaw clencher at night, softening the region inside and around the ears, you will start to feel a softening through the jaw and the back of the neck. Last pair, tongue as it rests deeply in the floor of the mouth, and all the muscles of the pelvic floor groin region. And this will be on the handout: soles, palms, eyes, ears, tongue, pelvic floor groin region. If you prefer, you could do what's called a body scan, if that works for you, just sweeping up and down the body, breathing into areas of tension and exhaling gently the tension into the soil below the building, something like this. And lastly, I'll say, when you're not sure about a practice, soften your body as radically as you can, lengthen your breath, and ask your question. Imagine dropping it into the space just behind your head, and that the space behind your head has enlightened awareness with deep compassion. And just wait and be receptive. Something will come. Words, knowing, a feeling, a picture, something will come. Be patient. And the more you practice this process, the less you'll need to ask outer questions, and the more you'll trust yourself to get the wisdom from within. We are all connected to the one source that has information about everything.
That was wonderful. I don't know about you, but I've been taking notes throughout this entire hour and a half, and I've missed so much of these wonderful things. And I just wanted to mention that this recording is going to be available. So we are going to be here for you, an ongoing process. You can reach out to us, and also you can rewatch this webinar. And I know I will be watching it. Just to even have the guided meditations, very helpful to me. I'm going to go ahead and do our closing exercise, and then we'll come back for more questions.
Yeah, we have a great one from Katie about navigating well-being when you're in a household that's noisy.
Oh, let's do that first.
Suggestions from the panel on navigating well-being when you're in a noisy household. That's going to be really hard if you're an HSP. I don't know if Katie is, but
noise canceling headphones.
Yeah, you got to spend as much money as you can afford on them as well. But I often tell parents and anyone who's navigating their well-being in noise to step outside. And even if you have young children, you can step outside where you can see through a window and they can see you, so they know you're there. Um, one of my colleagues hides in the bathroom a whole lot, and this is probably TMI, but when I was a kid, I thought my dad had a problem. You know, like he would go to the bathroom, he'd say he was going to have a BM, that's what we called it in my medical family, and he'd be gone for 2.5 hours. And as an adult, I realized he was hiding from all the three daughters. So finding that place is so important. And I also want to say, it is okay to train your family or your household that there need to be quiet times during the day. Remember emotional leadership? If you need some quiet time, everyone else does, even if they don't realize it. So, time for a household or family meeting, and decide on some times during the day when it will be silent in your home.
Yeah, I think that's great. I've heard that as well. Families and couples doing that, like couples having mornings being quiet time and not talking until a certain time. And some families choosing one day, like maybe a Sunday, where it's just a silent day and off technology, and everyone's just really taking time for themselves and spending time in nature. So I think anywhere between 2 to 3 hour range to a full day as a family experience, it's countercultural, but it's really important for sanity, even under regular circumstances.
And I would add to that 2 concrete things. One would be a noisy household often arises from a noisy nervous system. So 2 concrete things. One, if you're the one in charge of the food situation at the house, lower the forms of sugar that are entering the house dramatically. There's lots of ways to flavor food and reduce sugars. Make your own sauces, make your own dressings, then you can control the sugar. Number 2, diffusing essential oils. Get the highest quality, therapeutic grade, food grade oils. Check out a book on Amazon called Emotions and Essential Oils. It's spiral bound. There's a new edition every year. And you can look up what emotions you're dealing with or the house is dealing with and choose things. Citruses are really great in the morning to lift the mood. Trees are very grounding and balancing. So if the house is overstimulated, trees, oils from trees. Vetiver is really good. Patchouli, high-grade patchouli, Siberian fir, black spruce. These old trees know about longevity and sustainability.
So I'm going to lead us through our closing exercise, and then we're going to come back for more questions. I want to invite everybody to try this practice. It comes from Tellington Touch, Linda Tellington Jones. It's based on Feldenkrais. It's something I use on the horses, but T-Touch is now used on all species, dolphins, any pet, and even humans. So we're going to take our 2 hands and put them over our heart. And we're going to move them in a small circle. Now, I'm not just moving my hands over my clothes and my skin, I'm actually moving the skin and the fascia. Find the speed that is right for you. I generally go pretty slowly. If doing it in one direction, we generally do this clockwise. If that doesn't feel right to you, try counterclockwise. The wild Mustangs often prefer counterclockwise T-touch circles. This is something that when I do it, I try to really also feel into that compassion that I need to have for myself. You can do this, just a few circles is enough. You can do it any time during the day. And you can also keep your hands there if you would like. I want to invite you just to take a moment to notice in your body where you are in contact with yourself. Feel the weight of your body sinking into the surface that is holding you. Know that that surface is on the earth. Even if you're in a tiny apartment in Manhattan, allow your energy and your physical self to sink in. all the way down through all the layers into the earth. As you ground yourself, take a nice breath that you're aware of. Breathe in the way that works for you. If you notice yourself thinking about something else, appreciate the fact that your mind is working. Now, just for a moment, I'd like you to picture that vulnerable part of you. Maybe it is that you were when you were 3, 4, or 5. Maybe it's a hurt place in you. Or maybe it's that scared or panicky part of your brain that's really activated by what's going on in the world right now. Take that part of you and pull it into your chest and hold it between your hands and your heart. Take her or him and snuggle and allow them to be heavy. Allow that part of you to be your weighted blanket, or your cat, or your dog, or your horse. Bring that vulnerable, tender self into your loving arms. Just take a moment to breathe into that part of you with all the love and compassion that it is easy to give someone who's vulnerable. I'd like you to know that this vulnerable little one, this tender part of you, is always with you and knows that you have the compassion, the strength, the knowledge that is needed to love and protect them. So keep them with you and allow them to come in for a hug anytime they need it. Take one more nice, soothing breath. And I invite you to allow yourself to stay in this soft place. Even keep your eyes closed as we move back into Q&A. Thank you.
That was lovely, Alane. Thank you. Well, for those of you who can stay on line, we will move into Q&A. For those that need to move on to the rest of your evening, we thank you so much for being here with us. And thank you to Alane and Sara and Scott. And if you're looking for more resources, 1440.tv is there for you. Many offerings are free. Some are suggested donation. And we are really happy to be offering these services, these programs to support you through these times. So be well, and stay with us if you can. Just a couple of more questions. And again, you'll get an email from 1440 asking for feedback on this offering, and it will include a link to a really lovely summary of these practices, these 6 practices that are using today, with a short description as well as contact information for Scott, Sara, and Alane.
I don't know about you, but I've kind of been counting. I think it's 6 plus 50. You've mentioned so many things. That's why I have to watch it again.
Right. Yes. So the plan is to make these webinars, these live Zoom webinars we've been doing, available on demand. We're not there yet, but we're planning to do that. So keep an eye out, keep checking back. There's all kinds of new stuff coming up all the time on 1440.tv. All right, let's see. Remaining questions. What suggestions? No, we did that one for Katie about the noisy household. That was awesome. I think that's it. anybody's, oh, here's 2 more we just got in. Oh, these are appreciations. I so appreciate you all sharing these self-care practices. How beautiful, from Kelly. Val says, great job. I know there was one here. Bear with me, viewers. We did the writing prompts, sources, recommending books for self-care, comprehensive self-care, softening in the parasympathetic nervous system. Any books or practices to recommend on this softening? Scott talked about that. Scott, I also mentioned that you offer a breath work program on the Commune platform, a 5-day ecstatic breath work program.
Yeah.
You include the softening as part of that.
Yeah, it's 5 sessions of about 40 minutes each, and each one includes a guided session of ecstatic breath work, laying down. What was I going to say about that? Taking it through the different lens each day. Like day 1 is about the body. The body's the first reality. Day 4 is using the breath to deal with difficult emotions. And the way we design the course is that you can keep cycling through it.
Nice.
Something like, I think 8,000 or so people have already taken the course, and many of them keep cycling back through it. I'm actively writing a new 7-day course that'll have breath work there. I recommend, whether it's me or somebody else, finding somebody who's really steeped in the breathwork practice and at least trying it 3 times. Why 3? First time, it kind of blows you out of the water. After many years of living in an ashram and doing intense practices, I had my first session and I almost fell over. It felt like somebody plugged me into the wall. So the second session, you're generally either trying to recreate the first one or outrun it. And then the third one, you're starting to play a little bit. And then you can decide if you want to make some version of it your own practice. But choose somebody who's really deep in the practice themselves.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. I want to mention an offering that I recently did on, actually just this past Friday morning. I did an hour-long webinar on Zoom fatigue. It's called Exhausted by Zoom, Highly Sensitive. It's on YouTube. And I posted it up there. It's free. And I think that this is so much. Scott knows a little bit about me. He knows I spend a lot of time on Zoom by that question that you asked earlier. And I think that Zoom is something that is really, and too much time on the screen is something that is really challenging people right now. So it is just me, brainstorming all the things that I do to help myself. So you can find that there.
Little plug for, and not any one particular company, and it'd be better if I was actually wearing them to plug it. There are different varieties of glasses that one can wear that will block out the junk light. And there's so much research that one can find for themselves about the impacts of junk light coming in from our screens and how that affects our ability to sleep well, melatonin, all the things. Yeah, Alane's wearing them. There's a number of companies. You don't have to spend a fortune on them. True Dark is one of them. Those are the ones I have. In fact, there's a set you can put on later at night that look like you're Bono from U2. They're red. And your brain thinks you're in total darkness. So it starts to prepare one, Alane and I particularly, for getting to sleep when we say we want to sleep and doing that wind down bit.
When do you wear those? When you're walking around the house or when you're in bed?
The late night ones, the red ones, you wear, I read somewhere around 10 o'clock at night, unless you're earlier to bed. So probably like 2 hours before you go to bed might be a good time, but experimentation is the best teacher.
And the blue light blocking glasses, I addressed that in my webinar about Zoom. I just wear them every time I'm on the computer, unless I'm teaching, because you can see the lenses are a little thick. And so sometimes I wore them during that whole webinar, though, because I wanted to practice what I preach. But it has really changed. And these are just a $15 model off of Amazon. It's changed how I experience eye fatigue dramatically. They also have screens that go over your monitor that block the blue light that you can apply.
Yeah, I wear some cheap ones from Amazon too when I'm working on the computer. I mean, not when I'm teaching like this because they're not that attractive, but unless I'm going for the librarian look.
They're not cute. Somebody's going to figure that out. Maybe Oliver Peoples or Gucci. I don't know.
But another self-care book came to mind, an oldie but a goodie by Cheryl Richardson called The Art of Extreme Self-Care. And I really liked that. I remember reading that years ago and it was impactful. And also for relaxing the nervous system, the practice of yoga nidra is really, really helpful. And, you know, if you have a subscription to glow.com, there's a lot of guided yoga nidra on there, and you can buy all sorts of downloads, and there may even be some on YouTube. There seems to be pretty much everything on YouTube. But yoga nidra, you can do it for 15 minutes up to an hour.
And just real quick, yoga nidra, my understanding of it is it's training basically the body to go to a sleep state while awareness is still aware.
Yeah, going into the theta state. It's like a kind of like a self hypnosis.
Yeah. Tracy Stanley is one of the best out there, and she also has a great course on commune.
I jumped
Wonderful
in there
teacher.
on top of you, Scott. Say it again.
I said Tracy Stanley is a great one for teaching yoga nidra. She's got a course on commune. She's a wonderful teacher with a lot to share.
Tracy Stanley. Sara, you have any favorite yoga nidra recordings or teachers?
Rod Stryker is a really excellent with yoga nidra, and I have some audios from him back when there were just CDs. I'd say Rod Stryker.
Yeah,
that was Tracy's teacher, so good call.
Okay.
Richard Miller as well, right? He does.
Richard Miller, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I had some of his CDs too.
Jana Romer is another one in the Wanderlust world. Jana Romer, Roemer.
Nice.
Who
And
teaches.
I'm going to put in a plug for one of my favorite Kripalu yoga teachers, Jennifer Reese. She has the most gentle, soothing voice, and she has a number of recordings. So, all right, friends, I think we best wrap up. We're all done with the questions. Thanks again to those of you who stayed with us as we ran over a bit. We look forward to hearing from you with your feedback and any other suggestions for webinars. Include that in your feedback. And again, you'll get a summary of these practices as well as contact information for Sara, Scott, and Alane. Thank you, team. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us. It was fun.
Scott,
Yeah,
really
thank you so much.
Appreciated all you shared.